Things got complicated. My alien partner wants me to be with her sister also. The emergency pod hit Velorah's surface with enough force to rattle Kael's teeth and bruise his ribs. Alarms shrieked as systems failed one by one, filling the cramped cabin with acrid smoke. His research vessel, the Meridian, had suffered a catastrophic engine failure in orbit, and he'd barely made it to the escape pod before the ship tore itself apart. Kael kicked open the hatch and stumbled onto purple grass that glowed faintly in the twilight. 2 moons hung in the lavender sky, and the air tasted sweet, almost like honey. He'd studied dozens of planets, but Velorah had always been restricted, home to the Luminae, a reclusive species that rarely interacted with humans. He was trespassing. And possibly dying. Pain lanced through his side as he collapsed. His medical scanner was somewhere in the wreckage, along with his supplies. The world blurred at the edges, and he wondered if this was how his story would end, alone on an alien world, unnamed and unremembered. Stay still. The voice was melodic, layered with harmonics that seemed to resonate in his chest. Kael forced his eyes open and saw her, a woman with violet skin that seemed to shimmer with an inner luminescence. Her dark hair cascaded past her shoulders, and her eyes were a brilliant amber that caught the fading light. She knelt beside him, her touch gentle as she examined his injuries. "You're hurt badly," she said, her accent unfamiliar but her English perfect. "Can you walk?" I think so." Kael struggled to sit up, but the world spun violently. Without hesitation, she slipped her arm around him, supporting his weight with surprising strength. "My dwelling is close. I'm Veyka." "Kael," he managed. "I'm sorry for—" "Save your strength," she interrupted, but her tone was kind. "Apologies can wait until you're not bleeding." The next hours passed in a haze. Veyka's home was built into the side of a massive crystal formation, its interior warm and filled with soft, bioluminescent light. She cleaned his wounds with practiced efficiency, applied a gel that numbed the pain almost instantly, and wrapped his ribs with strips of cloth that seemed to pulse with healing energy. As Kael drifted between consciousness and sleep, he was aware of her presence, steady, calm, reassuring. When he finally woke fully, morning light streamed through crystalline windows, refracting into rainbow patterns across the floor. Veyka sat nearby, watching him with those remarkable amber eyes. "How long was I out?" he asked. "A full night cycle." She offered him a cup of something warm. "Drink. It will help." The liquid tasted like flowers and starlight, if such things had flavor. Kael sipped slowly, studying his rescuer. She wore simple clothing that left her arms bare, and he noticed the faint patterns that seemed to move beneath her skin, like constellations shifting in a night sky. "Thank you," he said quietly. "You saved my life." Veyka's expression softened into something that might have been a smile. "Perhaps. Or perhaps you were meant to be here." Her gaze held his, intense and searching. "Do you believe in fate, Kael?" He didn't know how to answer that. But as he looked at this beautiful, mysterious woman who had appeared when he needed someone most, he found himself wanting to believe in something. 3 months had transformed everything. Kael's broken ribs had healed, his rescue beacon remained unanswered, and somewhere along the way, he'd stopped checking it quite so often. Veyka had taught him the ways of Velorah, how to harvest the crystal fruits that grew in singing groves, how to read the weather in the color of the grass, how to feel the planet's gentle pulse beneath his feet. But more than that, they'd grown close in ways that transcended language and species. The Luminae possessed a subtle telepathic ability, an empathic sense that allowed them to feel the emotions of those they touched. When Veyka held his hand, she knew his joy. When they kissed, she felt his desire as keenly as her own. And when they made love under Velorah's twin moons, their connection became something profound, a meeting not just of bodies but of souls. Tonight, they lay tangled together in her dwelling, their skin still warm from passion. Kael traced the luminescent patterns on her shoulder, watching them pulse and shift beneath his touch. He'd fallen in love with her. The realization no longer frightened him. "Kael," Veyka said softly, her voice carrying an unusual tension. "There's something I need to tell you. About my people. About us." He propped himself up on one elbow, studying her face. Even after months together, her beauty still caught his breath. What is it? She took his hand, and through their touch, he felt her nervousness, her hope, her fear. Among the Luminae, when two souls bond as we have, there's a tradition. A practice that strengthens family ties and deepens emotional unity. She paused, choosing her words carefully. Partners are encouraged to form bonds not just with one individual, but with their sibling as well. Kael blinked, processing. Their sibling. My sister, Nyra. Veyka sat up, pulling a thin blanket around her shoulders. Through our family's telepathic link, she's already felt echoes of you, your emotions, your essence. She's felt what I feel when we're together. Her amber eyes searched his face. She wants to meet you, to see if there could be compatibility. The human part of Kael's mind reeled. His cultural programming screamed that this was wrong, impossible, a violation of everything he understood about relationships. But another part, the part that had learned to love an alien woman, that had adapted to a world beyond his comprehension, that part urged him to listen. I don't understand, he said carefully. You want me to be with both of you. Not because I don't love you enough, Veyka said quickly, and through their joined hands, he felt the truth of it. Among my people, this is how we prevent isolation, how we ensure that emotional bonds strengthen rather than isolate families. Love isn't diminished by sharing, it multiplies. And if I say no? Kael asked quietly. Veyka's expression was tender. Then nothing changes between us. I would never force this, Kael. But I sense that you're curious. That perhaps part of you wonders what it might be like to open your heart in ways humans rarely do. She was right. Beneath his shock and confusion, there was curiosity. These months with Veyka had taught him that love could exist beyond the boundaries he'd always known. Could it expand even further? I need time, he said, to think about this. Of course. Veyka kissed his forehead gently. Nyra arrives in 3 days. Meet her with an open mind, no expectations. And remember, she placed his hand over her heart, and he felt its steady rhythm. What we have is real. Nothing will change that. As Kael lay awake that night, Veyka sleeping peacefully beside him, he stared at the twin moons through the crystal ceiling and wondered what he was willing to risk for love. The morning Nyra arrived, Kael was a knot of anxiety. He'd spent 3 days alternating between rationalization and panic, trying to reconcile his human upbringing with the alien traditions he'd come to respect. Veyka had been patient, answering his endless questions about Luminae bonding practices, never pushing, always reassuring. Now, watching a sleek transport vehicle settle onto the purple grass outside their dwelling, Kael's heart hammered against his ribs. Breathe, Veyka murmured, squeezing his hand. Through their touch, she sent waves of calm. She's nervous too. The transport door opened, and Nyra emerged. If Veyka was twilight, her sister was dawn, her skin a lighter shade of violet with silvery undertones that caught the sunlight. She was slightly taller, her hair shorter and streaked with white, her bearing confident yet graceful. When her eyes, a brighter gold than Veyka's, met Kael's, he felt something like electricity arc between them. So you're the human who's captivated my sister, Nyra said, her voice warmer and more playful than Veyka's measured tones. She approached with easy confidence, stopping just before him. May I? Kael glanced at Veyka, who nodded encouragingly. May you what? Touch. Nyra extended her hand. Among my people, much is shared through contact. Words can deceive, but emotions rarely do. Taking a breath, Kael placed his hand in hers. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. Through Nyra's touch, he felt her curiosity, her genuine warmth, her excitement. But more than that, he felt echoes of himself, his kindness as Veyka had shared it, his passion filtered through his love for her sister, his loneliness before Velorah that had touched Nyra's heart. Oh, Nyra breathed, her eyes widening. You're even more than I sensed. There's such depth to you, Kael. He pulled back, overwhelmed. This is strange for me. Humans don't typically. I know. Nyra's smile was understanding, not judgmental. Veyka has shared your culture with me. The concept of exclusive pairing, the fear of sharing affection. It must seem like we're asking you to betray something sacred. Doesn't it bother you? Kael asked. That I love your sister. It's precisely why I'm here. Nyra moved to sit on the curved stone bench near the dwelling's entrance, gesturing for them to join her. I felt Veyka's joy when she bonded with you. I felt her loneliness ease, her heart expand. How could I resent something that brings her such happiness? She looked between them. And I felt curiosity, not jealousy, but wonder. Could I also connect with this human who sees beauty in what's foreign? Veyka sat beside Kael, creating a small circle of the three of them. There's no pressure, Kael. Today, we simply spend time together. Get to know each other. The day unfolded with surprising ease. Nyra was different from Veyka, more spontaneous, quicker to laugh, fascinated by human culture in ways her sister hadn't been. They walked through the singing groves, where Nyra taught Kael to harmonize with the crystal fruit's resonance. She shared stories of her work as a healer, her travels across Velorah, her dreams of seeing other worlds. As sunset painted the sky in shades of amber and rose, they sat beside a luminescent pool. Nyra's hand brushed Kael's as she reached for a piece of fruit, and instead of pulling away, she let it rest there. May I show you something? She asked softly. What? How I perceive you. Before he could respond, Nyra placed her other hand against his temple. Suddenly, Kael saw himself through her eyes, not just his appearance, but his essence. He saw his courage in leaving Earth, his capacity for adaptation, the way he loved Veyka with his entire being. He saw himself as beautiful, valuable, worthy. Tears pricked his eyes as the vision faded. Nyra, You don't have to decide anything tonight, she whispered. But know that what I feel is real. Not borrowed from my sister, but my own. As they walked back to the dwelling, Kael realized something profound. He was drawn to Nyra. Not as a replacement for Veyka, but as someone entirely new. And for the first time, he wondered if his heart might be larger than he'd ever imagined. 2 weeks had passed since Nyra's arrival, and Kael felt like he was learning to breathe underwater. Difficult, disorienting, but somehow becoming natural. He'd agreed to explore this unconventional arrangement, setting one firm boundary: absolute honesty. No hidden feelings, no unspoken resentments. The Luminae telepathic abilities helped, but Kael insisted on verbal communication too. Words mattered to humans. I'm scared, he admitted one evening as the three of them prepared dinner together. Sometimes I look at you both and feel overwhelmed. Like I'm not enough for 2 people. Veyka paused from slicing crystalline vegetables. You're not supposed to be everything to both of us. That's the point. We each bring different things to this bond. Nyra added spices to the cooking pot, her movements graceful. When you're with Veyka, be with Veyka. When you're with me, be with me. When we're together, be present with us both. There's no scorecard, Kael. They developed rhythms. Mornings often found Kael and Veyka working in the gardens while Nyra attended to her healing practice. Afternoons might be all three exploring Velorah's wonders. Evenings varied. Sometimes Kael spent intimate time with one sister while the other read or worked. Sometimes they simply talked late into the night, 3 souls sharing stories and dreams. Tonight was the Luminae bonding ritual, a ceremony that would formalize their triad. Kael was nervous as they prepared, bathing in the luminescent pool, adorning themselves with bioluminescent flowers that Nyra wove into crowns. The ritual connects us on every level, Veyka explained as they walked to a sacred grove where ancient crystals hummed with energy. Physical, emotional, spiritual. Are you certain you're ready? Kael looked at both sisters, Veyka, whose steady presence had saved him, and Nyra, whose spontaneous joy had opened him to new possibilities. I'm ready. The ceremony was both sacred and sensual. They stood in a triangle, hands joined, as the crystals around them began to resonate with their combined heartbeats. Veyka and Nyra sang in their native language, harmonies that made the air shimmer. When they invited Kael to join his voice to theirs, something extraordinary happened. He felt their emotions flood through him, and his through them. Love, desire, trust, vulnerability, all flowing in an endless circuit. Then came the physical bonding. Under the light of twin moons, they explored this new intimacy with tenderness and passion. Kael learned that loving two people simultaneously didn't divide his heart, it revealed depths he'd never known existed. When he held Veyka, Nyra's joy enhanced rather than diminished the moment. When he kissed Nyra, Veyka's love surrounded them both like a blessing. But the path wasn't without obstacles. One afternoon, Kael found himself feeling jealous when Veyka and Nyra shared a moment of telepathic communication he couldn't access. The feeling burned in his chest, ugly and unwelcome. "I felt that," Veyka said immediately, reaching for him. "Your jealousy." "I'm sorry," Kael muttered. "It's stupid." "It's human," Nyra corrected gently. "And valid. We share something you can't fully experience. That must be isolating." They spent hours talking it through, with Veyka and Nyra consciously including Kael more verbally, and Kael learning to voice his insecurities rather than hiding them. The experience taught him something crucial. Even unconventional relationships required the same foundations as traditional ones: communication, respect, and the courage to be vulnerable. As weeks turned into months, Kael discovered profound truths. He learned that love wasn't a finite resource to be rationed, but something that expanded to fill whatever space you gave it. He learned that different people could fulfill different needs without any one person being insufficient. Most importantly, he learned that opening his heart wider meant strengthening, not weakening, his capacity for connection. One evening, as they lay together watching bioluminescent insects dance through the air, Nyra spoke softly. "You've changed, Kael. When you first arrived, I felt walls around your heart. Now you're open." "Velorah changed me," he said. "You both changed me." "No," Veyka corrected, kissing his shoulder. "You changed yourself. We just gave you permission to try." The rescue ship appeared as a bright star growing larger in Velorah's sky. Kael had known this moment would come eventually. Someone would answer his emergency beacon, someone would offer him a way home. He just hadn't expected it to arrive now, when he'd finally found where he belonged. 6 months, he murmured, watching the ship descend. It took them 6 months. Veyka stood beside him, her hand in his. Long enough for a life to change completely. Nyra approached from the dwelling, her expression carefully neutral, but through their bond, Kael felt her tumultuous emotions. Fear of losing him, hope that he'd stay, and beneath it all, genuine desire for his happiness whatever he chose. The rescue team was professional and efficient. Captain Rodriguez, a weathered woman with kind eyes, explained that the Meridian's destruction had triggered automatic distress protocols. "We've been searching the sector for months," she said. "We're glad we finally found you, Dr. Kael. Your family will be overjoyed." Family. The word struck Kael like a physical blow. His parents, his sister, his colleagues, people who loved him and had mourned him as lost. Guilt twisted in his chest. "We can depart within the hour," Rodriguez continued. "I'm sure you're eager to get home." But as Kael looked at Veyka and Nyra standing together, their luminescent skin catching the afternoon light, he realized something profound. Earth hadn't been home for a long time. "Captain, can I have some time? To think, and to say proper goodbyes." Rodriguez's knowing look suggested she'd seen this before. Rescues who'd adapted so completely to alien worlds that leaving became painful. "You have until tomorrow evening. But Dr. Kael, you should know, if you choose to stay, extraction becomes exponentially more difficult. This may be your only chance." That night, the three of them didn't sleep. They talked about everything and nothing, holding each other close, trying to memorize the feel of being together. "You should go," Veyka said quietly. "Your family needs closure. Your career, your life, it's all waiting for you." "Don't tell him what to do," Nyra countered. "This is his choice." "And what do you both want?" Kael asked. Through their joined hands, he felt the truth. They wanted him to stay desperately, but they wanted his happiness more. It was the most profound act of love he'd ever experienced, letting go even when you wanted to hold on. Kael thought about Earth. His comfortable apartment, his prestigious position at the Xenobiology Institute, Sunday dinners with his family, the familiar weight of human society with all its rules and expectations. He thought about explaining this relationship to people who would never understand, about the loneliness of loving across light years, about slowly forgetting the feel of Veyka's hand in his or the sound of Nyra's laugh. Then he thought about Velorah. Purple grass and singing groves, twin moons and crystal dwellings. He thought about loving two extraordinary women who'd taught him that the heart's capacity was limitless. He thought about belonging to something larger than himself, not just a couple, but a family, a culture, a world that had welcomed him when he had nothing. The choice wasn't about romance versus duty. It was about who he wanted to become. Morning came, painted in shades of gold and violet. Kael stood before Captain Rodriguez with clarity in his heart. "Thank you for coming all this way," he said. "But I'm not leaving. This is my home now." Rodriguez nodded slowly. "I suspected as much. I'll notify your family that you're alive and well. They deserve that closure. Tell them I love them. Tell them I'm happy. Tell them I found something I didn't know I was looking for." As the rescue ship lifted off, becoming a bright point that eventually disappeared among the stars, Kael felt hands slip into his, one on each side. Veyka and Nyra, his partners, his family, his home. No regrets. Nyra asked softly. Kael looked at them both, these beautiful alien women who'd expanded his understanding of love itself. Not a single one. That evening, they climbed to the highest crystal formation to watch the twin moons rise. Their hands intertwined, forming a connection that transcended species and culture. Kael had learned the most important lesson of all: love wasn't defined by tradition or convention, but by the courage to follow your heart into unknown territory. "Tell me again," he said as stars began to emerge in the deepening sky. "How do you say forever in your language?" Veyka and Nyra answered in unison, their voices harmonizing into something that sounded like music, like promise, like home.